The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Excuse me, I took a deep breath and that was the end of that. At the start of this show, we've got a lot of things that we're going to be covering, but I want to, before we do anything, I want to talk about all of the people who have been in the path of this hurricane in the south. That it has just devastated so many people. And of course, we watch the news and we see what's happening with friends and family and we think, oh my goodness, you know, everything that we're going through pales in comparison, and how are these people getting through it? But of course, like you, my thought always goes to what's happening with families who have a child who's on the autism spectrum. When you've got a child who doesn't like to drive down a street because it gives them anxiety, the thought of having to leave your home and all your possessions because a flood is coming. It's an entirely different thing. And I want to remind everybody that my son and I just came back from being on a car tour of all of the card offices in Texas. And so it is devastating to us to think about what all the new friends that we met have been going through. I wanted to start the show by just letting you know, I know some of you have already written into me and said, what can we do? What do we do? And of course, people always say, give to the Red Cross, and that's a fine thing to do. But as you and I both know, you want to be able to get something to an autism family to make a difference. And because there are so many card offices that have been in the path of this storm, there has been a page that has been started, a GoFundMe that is just for card families, families that are dealing with autism, that are going through these interventions that you guys know. Samantha's putting it there for you on the screen. If you'd like to give any dollar amount, we're hearing from our friends and family that so much of the need is so basic. It's food. That they have no electricity. Their refrigerators are either completely ruined for good, or they can't get to their refrigerators, or there's no electricity to run the refrigerators. So being able to have a gift card to Whataburger to be able to feed your family, or to the local grocery store, which is the HEB. And I know because we visited an HEB that they have gluten-free things at those stores. They have wonderful organic fruit selections along with everything else. So a gift card to an HEB is an amazing thing. Or if you have $5 to give, just know that if you give to this fund that we're showing right here, it will go to autism families and to the therapists that are treating them that are displaced out of their homes, so that we can get everybody back to work and get therapy going. And I appreciate any dollar amount that you can give, because these are, to me, they are family, and to my son, they are family. Having said that, our well wishes go out to everybody in the path of the storm, and we hope that quickly aid can be given to them and that we can get everybody back to some semblance of health and normalcy. All right, I want to remind you that we're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours, and that there are lots of ways to participate. The whole show is meant to be interactive. Samantha is going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate and be a part of the conversation. I do want to remind you that as of last Wednesday, we are also live on Twitter and on Periscope, and we want to thank Samantha for having made that happen. So there's more ways than ever for you to watch, more ways to participate. If you're watching us on the homepage, and I do encourage you to do that, There are lots of things to do on the homepage, but if you click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, it starts the live show playing or the most recently recorded live show. And if you want to go back, you can click on the little memo tab and it will show you the 100 most recent episodes of Autism Live. Now, to the side of all that is something we call the live feature, and it's a way for you to have a conversation with complete and total anonymity. So if you put your cursor in the box that says your comment, you hit, you type, hit enter. You don't have to log in, no username, no password, no credit card. We don't know where you are. You have total anonymity, and the audience at home doesn't know who's asking the question. It shows up here on my screen and you and I can be having a conversation, but better than that, you can have a conversation with the experts that we have on the show. And oh my goodness, have we got an amazing show for you today. In just a second, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen, and Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is here. She's in the studio and she's going to answer your questions in just a moment. In the second half of our show, which is Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy Allspot Jackson will be joining me, and our special guest today is Judith Newman. She is the author of the new book that's getting a lot of press, To Siri with Love, all about how her son was able to connect to the world through Siri. So she's going to be talking with us. And boy, if you think that's a great show, and it is, let me just tell you, we got another bang up one tomorrow. We are having one of the actors from Atypical on the show with us tomorrow. And not only that, he is the actor who is on the autism spectrum that's part of the Atypical cast. So you're not going to want to miss that. And also we're having Matt Asner. He's going to be here on the show. And there's a slim possibility he's going to show up here with his dad. We don't know. We're waiting to hear that. But they're doing the Ed Asner poker tournament. So Matt is going to be here to talk about that. And who knows, we might also have Ed. And on top of that, we have Bonnie Yates, special education attorney. So it's a big week here on Autism Live. And without going any further into it, because we're taking time away from something I love more than anything else, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grandpichet.
Dr. Grandpichet.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome, my friends, to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have with us in the studio right now Dr. Doreen Grandpichet, and she's here to answer your questions. For those of you who are new to the show and have never had an opportunity to meet or talk with Dr. Grandpichet, let me just tell you that she is a true expert in the field of autism, having been working in this field for over 30 years. And I hate telling on you because you never know to look at her.
No, it's great.
But she has worked with everything from very small children.
Are you going to next year be able to say 40 years? Because next year it'll be 40 years.
Is that true?
Yeah, 78.
That's like amazing. That's a huge milestone.
It is a huge milestone.
Because I always think 30 and I think, oh, what are we saying? 30 in 2 months, but I've been saying 30 for a while. Yeah. So 40 years.
In the field, yeah. I started in 78, so next year it's 2018.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. We have to have a party for that. But in any case, and you've worked. Good thing to interrupt before. But you've been working with from small children up through senior citizens, every possible configuration of not just autism, but it's called the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And I want to bring that up because I don't bring it up enough. I think there's nobody who has a clearer vision of what it is, where we've come from, what it is we're looking at right now, and where we need to go. I always say you're a visionary. And, so much of my life now, I'm so hyper aware of perspective taking. It was never a part of my conversation. If somebody had said perspective taking, I was like, what are you talking about? Like on Disneyland, how they have it so that it looks like the buildings go further away? Like I really didn't know. What were we talking about? And now it's just a part of my every single day. And I really have to bow to you because I know that you are better at perspective taking than anyone else, and we need that in the autism community. Somebody who sees what it's like for the kid, somebody who sees what it's like for the mom, the dad, the grandparents, the scientist, somebody who sees what it's like for the insurance company, for the teacher. Because
what their perspectives are.
We got to get on the same page.
Definitely.
And I think that you are uniquely positioned to be able to inform all of us, because I think you can see it in a way that I know I I'm looking to see it in a better way now because I've been treated to seeing it through your eyes for a couple of years now, and it's a powerful view.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not just autism, right, Shannon? I mean, I feel like once you see things from different people's perspectives, then you can pretty much explain everything in their behavior, no matter what. And it really helps you go through life as a whole, and it helps you just understand where people are coming from.
Well, there are things that you have said over the years that like have become a part of how I look at the world. They're just written in granite.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
and,
Thank you.
And one of the things that you said a couple of years ago that I just go back to on a daily basis is that every single problem that there is on the planet, if you keep chipping away at it, you find that it's a problem with perspective taking. That
Honestly.
wars and everything. That if you and I have to be honest that has become a part of how I cope.
Right.
Because when I see things that I don't understand and think, what are we ever going to be able to do about that? It is comforting to me to realize this on a basic level is perspective taking, and then I have to take a step back and try to see the other person's point of view, which is a stretch for me sometimes.
Absolutely. Because once you start looking at other people's points of view, then the interesting thing becomes, how did they form their point of view? And then you come to realize that development, how
Yes.
it always, so how your development from childhood to adulthood, how that influences your perspective.
Yes.
And then to go one step further, your development is really all about the consequences and antecedents in your environment.
Yes.
How you were rewarded for certain things, how you were punished for certain things. I mean, you look at very, very touchy subjects like this, all the stuff that happened in Charlottesville.
That's
right?
exactly what I was thinking
Exactly.
about.
And you think of these young kids who are neo-Nazis and they have this strong belief. It's not like they were born that way, right?
Exactly.
They were reinforced for thinking something that to us is horrendous.
Yes.
And nevertheless, though, without that shelter of all of their friends and family who think the same and have been their support group and their team and their peers and all that sort of stuff, they feel very, very lost. Yeah. Without thinking of other people as being less than themselves, they feel very, very little. Yeah. So there's all these things about how you see the world and how that depends on, it's all about ABA. It's really about how the environment influences us.
Yes.
And so, it makes it harder to, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's still very hard to accept these people and their thoughts, but it explains it.
But the only way we can get to real change, real substantive change, is if we look at that.
Those types of things.
And it gives me hope that the most tweeted tweet, when you retweets, what last week was President Obama had tweeted a Mandela quote, which is about the fact that people are not born hating, you have to teach them how to hate. And then and everybody was retweeting that to remind themselves, okay, these people were taught to hate. And the thing that's hopeful about that is to think that in the future we can teach something different.
Yes,
if we can teach to hate, then we can teach to do other things.
Absolutely.
And that there is hope in that. It doesn't mean we can go, oh, okay, it's all okay. No, quite the contrary. But we all, it gives us hope that we can get busy and that it's not this vast thing of, okay, what can I do? There's nothing that can be done.
Absolutely.
And I feel like so many times in the last week, I was in conversations with parents and other people and talking about that for me, when I feel at sea, the only thing that I can do that I know at this point in my life is take action. Mm-hmm. That action is, because otherwise, I've also heard you talk about depression is that inward
anger turns inwards, yeah.
And that if you feel hopeless and feel like you can't do anything, then it becomes depression because your anger goes inside, and that the only thing for me to do is take some sort of action, which is why we started with Texas. It makes you feel hopeless.
Absolutely.
When you see, but if you take some action And it doesn't have to be the action that saves the world. We don't all have to get on planes.
That's
Apparently, they're turning boats away now because so many people have
are
shown
trying
up
to
with
help.
boats
How
of
wonderful.
people to help.
How
But they've said
wonderful.
to some of them, go home, we have too many boats, we can't move because there are so many boats. And we can't all go to be
Amazing.
part of the boats, but we all can give $1 or $5 or
That's
something that adds up and makes a difference. And when you do take action, you feel better.
Right.
Which sounds like it doesn't have anything to do with autism, but it's everything. I've been talking to autism parents about not getting stuck in one particular thought.
Oh, yeah.
Not getting stuck on, the way this started was that I said that I do this talk and I always say I'm the luckiest person I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I give examples of why I'm so lucky. But one of the biggest ways that I'm lucky is that my child was developing typically. Everything was in place. He was making eye contact. He was speaking in full sentences. And then something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what happened. And I, every day, make the choice not to be stuck in that moment.
Yeah.
That I make the choice to say, but what am I going to do about it?
Right.
Not because I could sit down and make myself full on crazy
Right. Absolutely.
about what happened
Absolutely.
and whose fault is it,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
who do I assign, me and other people. But I make the choice every day because that is not action for me. For other people, they found a way to make that actionable,
Right.
and I have nothing but respect. But I make the choice every day to say, what am I going to do about the fact, yep, my child
Yep.
was diagnosed with autism, we lost language, lost the icon, what am I going to do about it?
Right.
And every time I get a little bit stuck and I say, no, do something, even if it's move this piece of paper over here,
Right.
I can get myself, because I can be the amazing paralyzed woman. There's a talk I do about that.
It's funny because with autism, I always say that, and look what you've done with it, actually, Shannon, and you're a great example of this because what you do, like just through this show, just through the travel that you do to all of our sites, it influences other people pretty significantly. So you take something that could have turned into this horrible depression, etc. thing, and you've turned it into a positive thing that impacts the world in a very positive way.
Well, thank you.
And that's the truth. And I always talk about parents who make a choice of actually just feeling, and it's a natural thing to feel victimized, to feel depressed, why me, all of that, and then to ultimately helping the parents, and sometimes they on their own are just incredible people who take that and turn it around and then start to give in incredible ways. You know, you being one, Nancy being another parent, with many, Bonnie, Bryce, so many parents who do something significant that just changes the world.
Well, we've seen that here. I mean, I'm getting chills thinking about it. Forever, we've talked about the power of one here on the show. And I've seen parents who have arrived and started asking questions. And the mom that we referred to forever is the strawberry mom, because she was trying to get her son to eat a strawberry. And, and I remember having conversations with her after that because she's a local mom. And she was like, I haven't found my place. I haven't found my thing. I haven't found where I fit in and how I'm going to be able to give back. And she started a little over a year ago. There's a young woman who's a sibling in New Jersey who started a group called Fantastic Friends. And it's neurotypical kids getting together with kids who are on the spectrum, and they do an activity and they have a prom, and it's just amazing.
Awesome.
And so she started it here in the San Fernando Valley. And I have seen this mom blossom, and she's doing all these things.
Absolutely.
And you just go, look at that. People. Nancy Alspaugh Jackson has the best quote. She says, you just haven't found how your disability is your opportunity yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that when
That's
you
so
do,
true.
and you find your place of how your groove, of how you're going to be able to give back, it makes it better. But it starts with action.
Definitely.
So anyway, having said all of that, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure always.
And for answering questions. I'm going to jump into a question that
Yes.
we have. DJ Phillips is, and he has given permission always for me to say his name, and he's going to be on the show with us here coming up sometime soon. But he is a gentleman who writes into the show always. DJ is sort of our honorary, I wish that I could employ DJ because he calls me all the time and says, no, you filed this under the wrong category, or you know what, Shannon, this got cut off a minute here. He keeps watch. He's our quality control, right? That's
Yeah.
here at Autism Live. So we thank DJ Phillips for all that he does, and he's really a diligent viewer. And so he had a question that he wanted me to ask you today. How do you teach a 24-year-old with Down syndrome how not to be a sore loser when playing games?
Right, and that's and hi DJ, always nice to hear your questions, and I'm just so honored that you watch our show and like our show.
Yes.
That's a very hard thing to teach, you know. One thing I found is that individuals with Down syndrome are actually easier in a lot of ways to teach things to than individuals with autism. I think there's a lot of research that shows people with Down syndrome actually learn very, very well, and sometimes can even function very, very close to normal, whatever that may mean, in society. So it's not about the diagnosis so much as it is about actually teaching someone not to be a sore loser. And I'll tell you why it's difficult, because we have to be able to first define what is a sore loser. So as like anything else in behaviorism, you want to be able to define it on very, very precise terms. And so let's say from my perspective, a sore loser would be someone who maybe has a tantrum whenever they lose. Or perhaps, I don't know, says mean things if they lose. Or so we'd have to be able to like really itemize the specific behavior, that one observable behavior. So you always have to define according to observable behavior. So first you define the observable behavior and say, if any of these things occur, that is the indication that the person is a sore loser. And then the second thing that you have to do is you have to make it so that the individual actually cares not to exhibit those behaviors. So how do you do that? Now, you could do it in a very kind of sterile experimental format, which is you could reinforce the individual for making statements that are not indicative of being a sore loser. So for instance, you could give the individual a whole array of appropriate statements, things like, oh, that's sad, but maybe I'll do better next time. Or, you know, oh, well, everybody loses once in a while. Or any other type of statement that acknowledges the fact that they lost, but is not indicative of being a sore loser. And you could reinforce the individual. So when the game is over and they've lost, then you will actually put the list of options in front of the individual, assuming they can read it. And they would then select one and they would say it, and you're done, and you reinforce the individual and say, that was amazing, and all that sort of stuff, and you move on. So that's the very basic form of it. And in real life, why are some people sore losers? So let me just kind of separate what I've been explaining. What I just explained is the pure behavior analytic view of it. And because I have this dual thing going on inside me, I'll now give you the psychologist view of it, right? So the psychologist view of it is that obviously we are sore losers when the loss indicates more than just a game. So if it's a loss of a game and we know that we have multiple opportunities to play this game again, and next time we might win or whatever it is, and it doesn't really matter because after all it's a game, then we wouldn't be a sore loser about it. But the reason that someone could be a sore loser is that it means a lot more to them. So what it means to them is that they've been a loser in life. It means that they will now experience a massive amount of embarrassment. That it means to them that because I lost this game, people are thinking of me in a much worse way. So in other words, in the individual's cognitive abilities, like what they think about it, the interpretation, again, their perspective, their rumination over it, makes it much bigger than it actually is. In fact, in life, if you think about it, every reaction we have is because of that, right? Yeah. I mean, one person won't react to the same thing happens. One thing happens, you will react differently than I will. And it all has to do with our internal interpretations of the situation. So if this individual is a higher functioning individual, I think it would be important also to help them understand a little bit more about their own belief systems, about their own like how they are interpreting it, and that's where the cognitive behavior therapy comes in. So, you know, I like very much with our kids on the spectrum, what we do is we teach them behavioral consequences. We do ABA, and we reinforce the appropriate behavior. We don't give any kind of attention when an inappropriate. So when the person is being a sore loser and saying those mean things or whatever behaviors that are indicative of being a sore loser, we ignore those, we put them on extinction. As anything else with behavior analysis, you ignore the behavior you don't want, you reinforce the behavior you do want, and things do change, and that's what we do. But then we go further with our high-functioning kids, and we try to get them to internalize that by really understanding the cognition behind it. That's why we have a whole curriculum called cognition. And that whole area really is more cognitive behavior therapy, and it's about trying to teach the individual that the way you think about things is what's causing you to see this as a negative event.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing, and I think that's the hard part. And that's why I said it's pretty hard to do this. But and until you do that, it isn't internalized. So that means that if you just behaviorally deal with this situation with this 24-year-old, every new situation you'll have to keep teaching, because they haven't figured out the formula. They haven't figured out that, oh, I react as a sore loser to all situations of loss because I see them as indicating much more than just a game. You know what I mean? And so the next game and the next game we'll have to go ahead and teach the individual until they finally figure it out.
Yeah.
Whereas in cognitive behavior therapy and psychological practice, what you're doing is you're also helping the individual open their eyes to how they perceive the world, how they interpret events, and they find that their own interpretation is what's faulty.
Yeah.
And that changes things.
And I just want to say, DJ, I mean, we've talked about it a lot here on the show, but Skills has an array of lessons.
Absolutely.
There's even one that's called Winning and Losing.
Yes.
In Skills. And if you're interested in Skills, it's you can call 877-975-4559, or you can go to skillsforautism.com. I love that you can go into Skills and you can search just one lesson. You could go into winning and losing games. Mm-hmm. You could do that. But as you say, it's so often a skill connects to something else. And I love that
Absolutely.
You just gave us a broad array. And I, of course, always think about when Jem was going through these lessons and Skills, that's always, as soon as you start talking about something, I think, okay, so which lesson would that have been in Skills, and who worked on that with him? That's where my mind goes. And it really, I was thinking about that there are self-regulation lessons in there too.
Yes.
That are super important. I can remember when Jem was 7 going to Disneyland with friends that have 3 neurotypical boys. Mm-hmm. So there we were at Disneyland, and my son had been having ABA therapy at that point for 4 years. The other kids were out playing with other kids. And I would sometimes cry about that and think, oh, he's missing out on everything that they got, you know? But there was a moment when we were saying, which ride are we going to go on next? And one of the other boys, who was a full year and a half older than Jem, said, well, I really want to ride this ride. And his mom said, oh, did you not see when we came through the gate, that ride is closed for renovations? And there were tears and there was hysteria. And he laid down on the sidewalk and he was like, I don't even want to be here if that ride's not here. And Jem looked at me and he said, doesn't he know it's not the end of the world? And I was like, win for the ABA, right? And he had that perspective because he had worked on 75 different lessons that coalesced in that moment.
Absolutely.
And he said, this is a bummer, but it's not the end of the world.
Right.
I'll come again. This is like a 2 out of a 10.
Right.
I'm sad about it, but...
And all of those things, like teaching our children how to rate their disasters. Sometimes I see that even with my kids right now. It's so important to be able to put it in contrast with other things, like giving it a 2 out of 10. That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
If you really sit down and think for a moment, how bad is this? And you realize that it's not really a 10. It
Yeah.
just immediately alleviates things for you, you know?
Absolutely.
There's also and we haven't taken it very, very far, but a big section is beliefs, and in
Yes.
cognition. Beliefs is very important because it helps you to understand that what you believe is not necessarily a fact. And that knowledge is very different from beliefs, and those two separate sections in cognition curriculum. And that's kind of important. And because we have shown through skills, the curriculum, that what you believe eventually ends up feeling like it's fact. It becomes your knowledge. And they influence each other. And it's really important to separate those and sometimes just realize that, oh, it's something I believe. Like, it's not necessarily the truth. Like, I believe that, I don't, this going to this park today is not even worth it just because whatever. It is the end of the world, but really it isn't.
Right. Well, and the truth is that that's not in the academic curriculum.
No, not at all, yeah.
But it applies to the academics because now in core curriculum, starting in 2nd and 3rd grade, they're getting them ready to be able to do critical thinking for essays and things like that.
That's great.
So you will see in 3rd grade, Jem was working on it sooner, so he knew from those lessons the difference between a fact and an opinion. But then he started coming home in 3rd grade with these things saying, Billy does this. Is this a fact or an opinion? Because when you get to writing an essay, you give your sources, but then you give your opinion.
Absolutely.
And you have to understand the difference between the two.
Yes.
And if you're thinking, I think sometimes, I always tell therapists that the first time that we waited forever for ABA to come about, and then, we started and they were like, touch car. And I remember going, we're never going to get there. If we're going to touch car, like, I need my kid to speak so that he can go to college. Touch car, you guys?
No.
And they always laugh at me when I say that, right? They're like, well, there was much more to that. But you don't know that on the first day.
Well, you
when
have
people
to
are doing
start.
touch car.
And you're right for saying that, Shannon. I appreciate you saying that because many parents now might be thinking my child won't get there. But our kids ultimately eventually do get there, whether they're young and get there fast, like some kids, or they're older and they get there. And it's important for them to, anything that you can teach a child to figure out the formula is better than teaching memorization, always.
Always. And yet ABA gets the rap all the time that it's just rote memorization.
Right.
No, ABA teaches your kid how to learn and how to apply what they know. It really teaches you how to organize your thoughts to be productive.
Exactly.
Towards a goal. Anyway, we've gone on too long without a break. We're going to take, DJ, I hope that answered your question. And thank you so much for writing into us. We're going to take a break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk. Somebody wrote into us yesterday and said, I have a 3-year-old and it looks like we might be looking at autism. What do I need to do? And boy, I'm so glad you came here because we're going to be able to fill your bag full of stuff to get you on the right track. So stick with us. We'll be back more with Ask Dr. Doreen. Oh, and as we go to break, I was supposed to tell you, we got 1 day left that you can enter our contest for the scallop. These are these cute little seats that fold up into, it looks like a tote bag, but what they do, it's got a little harness that somebody straps themselves into it, and when the kids lean back, it hugs them, supports them. You can take it to a concert and sit on it for something that has no back, but if you've got a little one who's having trouble sitting quietly during circle time or has low muscle tone and is tipping over, you need the scallop. This is amazing. It's coming to us from R82 in Convade. We love this company. They're the ones that gave that special needs car seat to the mom who needed it so desperately last December, and they were here on the show with us. They're giving away 1 scallop. Excuse me, I get so excited I'm throwing pens. 1 scallop we're going to give away to a viewer tomorrow. All you need to do is write to the email that you see on the screen there, autismlive@gmail.com, and say, I want the scallop. We do want you to include your mailing address so that we can mail it to the winner. We do have some growth charts for some of the people who don't win, but there have already been enough people that we don't have enough growth charts. So just know you might just be entering, and it will be 1 lucky winner though that gets a scallop. And if you want more information about a scallop because you want to get one, you can call 844-876-6245, or you can visit alsoforme.com. This is an amazing invention. We are going to take a break and we'll be back with more Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages.
Welcome to Smarty. This month we're going to be making our own chore spin wheel. You'll notice while we make this fun activity, these icons are going to be popping up onto the screen. These correlate to specific skill sets that are in the Skills program. Skills is the ABA-based online tool that helps parents build their own teaching plan for children on the autism spectrum. If you are a Skills user, this will help you get the most out of this educational opportunity. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are a large bowl to trace, cardstock, scissors, a pencil, a ruler, a hole puncher, a metal brad, and any other arts and crafts materials you want to use to decorate your pinwheel with. So step 1, you're going to take your large bowl and place it on top of the cardstock and trace the circle. Step 2, you guessed it, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut along the line. Step 3, you're going to fold the circle into quarters. This is the best way to make sure all the triangles within it are symmetrical. Once you folded the paper, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to trace those lines so you can actually see them on the circle. Now here comes the fun part. Take your arts and crafts materials and you're going to decorate the chore spin wheel. I used some crayons to color in every other quadrant so you could see them pop and see the difference between the different chores. Place the different adaptive skills your child is working on in the different quadrants. Once you're done decorating the circle and labeling the different chores in each quadrant, then you're going to take your scrap paper that you had left over and you're going to cut an arrow out of it. Once the arrow has been cut, you're going to take your hole puncher and hole punch on the very edge of it. This will be your spinner. Then you're going to take your arrow and your circle and line them up and take your brad and place it through and secure it. And voila, you have your finished chore spin wheel. Well, I enjoyed making this activity with you and I hope to see you soon. Until next time, guys, craft on! To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Grandpichet and she's answering your questions in real time. So we had somebody write in yesterday and they said, I'm just now finding out that my 3-year-old may have autism. I'm gonna need some help reading the symptoms. He may be autistic. And I think how great, first of all, I just wanna congratulate you that you're asking questions and that you found us and that you have already said the thing that is hardest to say at the beginning, which is, I'm gonna need some help. And you already are aware of the fact that that is in fact what you're gonna need. And I'm thrilled that you're here and I'm sending you air hugs. And I want to say to you that it's going to be okay and that you're going to be okay and that there is help and that there is support. It's just like a decision tree figuring out how you're going to get it the quickest.
Yeah.
But I'm going to turn that over to you.
Sure.
And let you have at it.
So I'll first give you like a sort of a summary of the diagnostic manual symptomology and then I'll just talk to you about symptoms to look for your
But I think
child.
they've already looked at the symptoms. I think, do you read it that way, that they're wanting to know what the symptoms are?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just thinking that the person I'm going to need some help reading the symptoms. So I'm not sure. So I'll try to define them. But
okay, because I read it, I think I'm going to need some help because I think he has autism.
Right.
I've looked at the symptoms. I think he has autism, so I think I
Right.
think they already know the symptoms.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
So we'll talk about maybe both.
Okay.
So, so the symptoms of autism are essentially you're looking at 2 areas of deficit. So for a 3-year-old, what you're looking at is this would be a child who is not communicating the same way that other 3-year-olds would be communicating. And that is a really important thing because when you can't communicate appropriately, you become frustrated and then you start to show other behaviors that are not the symptoms of autism, but they are side effects, as I've always said, because you can't communicate. So communicating like 3-year-olds basically means that you're able to express your needs, you're able to understand when you can have things and when you can't have things, you're able to wait, you're able to pay attention when other people draw your attention, or you're able to pay attention to things that are just inherently important in the environment, like things that maybe have your name in them or are louder, those types of things. And so that's a big part of communication. And if those things are lacking, then you're going to be frustrated. When you're frustrated, you can't express yourself, then you tantrum instead, you aggress, you hit people, you grab things, you start to do other ways of communicating. You have show behaviors that are not appropriate. Another part of autism that's a diagnostic feature is the fact that you have what we call stereotypic repetitive behaviors. Now this is very important, because if you don't have the stereotypic repetitive behaviors, then your diagnosis is ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, but more Asperger's type. And the repetitive stuff that we're talking about is stuff like lining up objects, repetitively turning the lights on and off, closing the door, looking at things from the corner of your eyes, twirling objects, looking at objects that are circular a lot, looking at reflections, playing with sound, things that are repetitive and don't seem like they have any function of their own. The reason that our children do these things is varied, and I think some of this behavior is just because the child has different sensory input and they're trying to modulate the sensory input in their environment in one way or another. But regardless, while they're doing these things, they're not paying attention and learning like a typical child would, because this type of behavior is much more, I don't want to say rewarding, but it's like any other habit. It becomes addictive and it becomes rewarding, and you engage in this habit so much that you just exclude yourself from the rest of the world, and you become so turned in and isolated that you are not paying attention to the rest of the world and you're not learning. You'd rather do this. And that's really, those are the two key components. It's sort of, you are doing so much of this other stereotypical behavior, and during that time you're not learning, and so therefore your communication is delayed. If your communication is delayed, obviously your social behavior is delayed, which means it's a cycle, right? So the more socially delayed you are, the more you're doing these internal ways of reinforcing yourself, and it just keeps getting worse. It's a perpetual circle. That's bad. Now, the good news is that your child is only 3, and if you're saying may have autism, that means that the symptoms may not be very clear to whoever has diagnosed, or perhaps to you, or whatever it is. But the sooner you identify, and the label doesn't matter. The label only matters because it gets you funding. That's it. The rest of it doesn't matter. It's a series of symptoms that you're dealing with. So if I said my child who's comes from another country, let's say, I've adopted a child from Korea and I want to teach this child English, I would do the same stuff. Let's say I have a child who has real severe visual problems and we haven't gotten glasses yet, I would do the same stuff. So it doesn't we do this for children with fetal alcohol syndrome, with like a variety of learning disabilities, all learning. So don't be afraid of the label. Don't let the label frighten you in any way. Don't let the label give you the impression that this is going to be lifelong. Don't let anything overwhelm you. Just list a series of symptoms, and what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of those symptoms and turn them around as best as we can. So what you do is what we do in behavior analysis is that we essentially list all the things that we consider to be deficient, and we list all the things that we consider to be excessive, and then we try to balance them out. And that's what ABA does. So something that's deficient, for instance, is language. So you increase language, you teach speech and language, and as you teach everything, you reinforce more and more of that. What seems to be excessive, maybe it's a self-stimulatory type of behavior. Maybe this is a child who lines objects up. Okay, I'm going to decrease that. How do I decrease that? I prevent it from happening. I keep my child engaged in something that is allowed and good. So anything that's not appropriate, I'm trying to reduce that not reward it, not allow it. So that's called, extinction or blocking. Both of those things are very effective. And I'm reinforcing instead and prompting all the things that are good. I'm modeling for my child language and speech and all these other things and social behavior and all of that. So I'm teaching all these great skills. The more of these I teach, the less of the other challenging stuff will actually happen, because don't forget, the challenging stuff happens because I don't have other skills. I hit because I can't verbally express myself. I repetitively play with a toy because I can't play appropriately with other children and I don't get enough reward out of it. Once those things are in place, these things aren't necessary anymore. So now, just to give you that, so that's the gist of ABA, and wherever you are, you need to just reach out to us. 3 is great. It's very, very young. It's perfect. It's the most ripe age for learning. And what you do is you get an ABA program, an intensive ABA program. I'm saddened to see so many ABA agencies out there who take in 3-year-olds and do 10-hour programs, which have, by research, published research over and over, been shown not to be effective. Because the truth is, your child has a certain number of deficits, and as they age, so once they become 3.5, there's more deficits, and once they become 4, there's more. So it has to be very intensive, because over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, you're trying to catch them up to the level of a 6-year-old, and 6-year-olds can do a lot, let me tell you. So that 3-year period, you're not just teaching what a 3-year-old can do, you're teaching faster than their normal development, because you got to catch them up.
Yeah.
So it's got to be intensive, and when I say intensive, I mean 40 hours of therapy at least per week. 1-to-1 therapy, 40 hours per week. That's very important. I would recommend that you keep the child out of school for as long as you are legally allowed to do so, so that you can teach more intensively. Intensive ABA is much more intensive than school. It just is. We're packing stuff in because we're trying to catch the child up. So it's like all day long, every day. And what you do, and you do that, and there's play involved in it, so it's not like an aversive experience for the child. It's packed with reinforcers, it's packed with play and breaks and all sorts of stuff, and a good ABA program knows how to do all that. So what you're doing is called EIBI. It's also referred to as EIBI, which is Early Intensive Behavior Intervention, and you can get it pretty much anywhere in the country now. We have over 140 sites, so you're welcome to get on our website, which is CARD, Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and we'll help you. If we're not in your region, we'll help you find another organization that is in your region, because there are organizations everywhere now, and you definitely will get a supervisor who's called a BCBA, which stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and you'll get a team of therapists, and hopefully they'll use technology like Skills, which gives you a full picture of every deficit your child has, and they get to work and they start teaching all those areas, and before you know it, you'll see incredible gains with your child.
Absolutely. So centerforautism.com, you can go there, you can click on the locations tab to see if one is near you, or you can call the 800 number, or there is a portal on which you can go and start a process to help you see if you are able to get CARD where you are, or CARD can refer you to somebody. In the meantime, though, if you become a CARD client, you're going to need to fill out the skills assessment. I say to everyone, you should do that anyway for yourself. It's the best gift. It takes a while. It's something that you have to answer a bunch of questions, but you can do that, and in a trial period, you get a 14-day free trial period. You could do that to see where you're at. And I think that could be really, really useful. But it is, as Lisa Ackerman says, when you think that your child has autism, it's not game over, it's game on. So that action piece that we were talking about before, you gotta get into the action. But you can come here and ask questions and we will be here for you. You do not need to do this alone, and you won't be the first person to have done this. And I always say to people, look, if I could do this, I know for sure that you could do this. And I'm happy to help you on your road. So stay tuned with us, right? We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back. I'm hoping to get to 2 questions. I welled up here. We just got a question from our West Virginia mom that we've got to talk about. I'm devastated for you.
And I definitely want to address this potty training one because they're in the middle of the procedure and it's important that I comment on it.
All right. I don't know how we're going to get to all 3 of those.
Okay.
Short break, and then we're going to come back. Stick with us.
What is autism?
I do need
What
to.
is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
Welcome back. We're going to rapid fire as fast as we can 3 questions that I really want to get to. First one, I'm potty training my 9-year-old using the Fox and Asrin method that you spoke of on your show. My son has severe autism, so I know this will take longer than usual. I've gotten to the point where he's holding his pee for 15 minutes. However, what is the ratio of liquid intake to time off the potty? I don't think I should continue to flood him with liquids, but I don't know how much I should lessen the intake. Please help. All your toilet training tips have been so helpful. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
So very quickly, please stop flooding him. At this point, you need to stop flooding him with water, and you need to start gradually going down to normal. So in other words, normal intake of fluids should be half of your body weight in ounces.
Per day?
Per day. So for instance, if he's 9 years old, I don't know how much, maybe he weighs 80 pounds.
Okay.
If he weighs 80 pounds, he needs 40 ounces of water a day. That's
A
it.
day.
So that's pretty easy to measure, and so start dropping to that. And that's it. And just keep him on the 15-minute schedule right now. All you do for the next couple of weeks is send him to the bathroom every 15 minutes. Then what you do is you just start increasing that.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not he's successful at the 15th minute, it doesn't matter really. The issue is that you just want to make sure that there's no mistakes happening in between when he's off. But if you keep him 15 minutes and you very slowly increase to 20, 25, 30, and so on, then after you've done that over the course of a month and he's on a regular schedule at about 30 minutes, then you start to try to fade off your reminder. Then it becomes then you just basically, like, you'll show a picture, or you'll put a watch on him which has a buzzer every 30 minutes, something that is more subtle than someone reminding him, and then gradually it becomes just a normal habit.
Okay, so timer goes off, you go to the bathroom, and he can go or not go. You have a couple of minutes that he stays there in the bathroom, go or not go, but it's not a recrimination thing. You're supposed to go. There's no discussion about it.
Like
we just
that.
put him on
Not
the
at
potty.
all.
He goes or he doesn't go. If he goes, woo, party.
Major reinforcers,
you know,
absolutely.
But if he doesn't go, we don't say anything about that. We just,
Yes.
good job sitting on the potty.
That's
we
right.
pull up the pants and we go on,
And if
and we
he-
come back a few minutes later.
15 minutes later.
We wait a whole other
He's
15
on a
minutes.
15-minute
But if he
schedule.
doesn't go, we wait 15 minutes
You
again?
still wait
Okay.
15 minutes. If he has an accident in the second 15-minute period, then you can do 2 things. You can either shorten it again, to 5 minutes after he hasn't gone, or you can let him sit longer until he goes. But don't change your interval because you've made good progress. You're at 15 minutes.
But the main thing is it's almost like a non-reaction when they wet themselves or don't do anything.
You just
but the
need
big reaction when they go on the potty.
Right.
Okay, we tend to talk, Dr. Graham-Piché. We tend to be like, why aren't you peeing? And why aren't the
no. Continue to be a behaviorist. You've done a great job.
There we go. Okay, our West Virginia mama wrote in, and I'm heartbroken. She said, hello, my daughter recently started kindergarten. There were many instances of bullying in her first week, including being blocked from the bathroom, isolated, punched in the head, etc. It has been horrible. I tried working with the school, and they were no help in handling these situations or even with accommodating my daughter's needs. I decided it was best to homeschool her for at least a year so we can continue working on social skills, etc., through the skills program along with our homeschool curriculum. The main issue we are having is that she has regressed tremendously in talking. She was completely verbal, and now after 7 to 8 days of school, she went from multiple word sentences to only scripting and answering with one word when asked a question. The school said she isn't eligible for services now that she is homeschooled and that she does not meet the requirements in IDEA for an IEP. How do we work on regaining her speech? I'm not sure where to start exactly, and thanks. I just want to say that we will address the legal parts of this tomorrow with Bonnie Yates, special education attorney, but I want to talk about the regression with you.
Yeah, that's horrible. I'm really sorry that you had to experience that, and I hope that Bonnie will give you a lot of different ways to handle. Honestly, you have every right to actually threaten the school with a lawsuit because they are clearly responsible for some of the regression that has occurred, and they should help you fund some of this work that will be necessary to kind of get her back. But having said that, I don't want you to be afraid because this is a temporary type of regression and it is very clearly associated with anxiety, and she's had a bad experience. It's almost like saying she had PTSD, so this is post-traumatic stress. And with a little time passing and her realizing that it is a safe environment again at home, and once you reintroduce to school, you'll have to also make sure that she feels safe, because I'm not sure you'll ever reintroduce her to this school because she needs to have an environment ultimately where she feels safe. But what you would do right now is just, you look at the areas of language that have gone, and you know what she's capable of, and so you will try to prompt her visually, verbally, model for her however you can so that she does more lengthier sentences, full sentences, and just be very rewarding right now, and just set up a program for her at home. You're pretty familiar with our skills stuff, and so set up a little program. Just have her, let's say, she's not using descriptors, or her statements have gone down to just 5 words or 3 words or whatever, and she's capable of more. Start modeling for her what she should be responding and highly reinforce it. Make it a very pleasant environment. I would recommend that you get other kids involved. So if you can bring other children to the house that are very kind and gentle, I think that would be important, and that would go a long way, because the bullying that she has experienced from other children. So at this point, what you would be concerned about is her not developing a fear, an actual phobia of being around other children. So I think that's very important right now. But don't worry, because just even if you did nothing, honestly, with a period of time passing, the anxiety will dissipate and she will start to be herself again. Just to expedite things, you just need to model for her a lot and prompt a lot and maintain a very, very intensely reinforcing environment.
Okay, we're not going to have time to get to the third question, but I will say for the mom who has the son with ADHD who having a problem in the afternoon, not in the morning, and being sent to the principal. We will talk about this with Bonnie Yates tomorrow from a legal standpoint, because he's fine in the morning, afternoon, everything falls apart, and they send him to the principal. So we will talk about that.
Well, he might have some, like, he might be also dropping in sugar, or I don't know what's happening with him, but if a child is fine in the morning and not doing so well in the afternoon, that indicates to me that physiologically they're getting exhausted or not fueling.
Yeah, and this idea of, okay, let's send them out and send them to the principal, not what's going to work.
No.
So we'll have Bonnie talking to you a little bit about legally about what you can do with the school so that they can get back on their job, because really they need to be doing some things and taking some data for you so that you can be better informed. But we thank you. We don't have you next week, but then we have you back for a while.
Okay.
I think.
I don't know where I am next week.
But on my schedule, we don't have you next week.
Yeah, I'm in Texas actually, because I'm going down to visit the Texas offices.
Oh my goodness, you'll have to give them our love. But we appreciate you for being here today.
Thank
and we'll
you so
see
much.
you in 2 weeks back. We're going to take a break now. I believe it's the A word that we're going to, and then we're going to come back with Nancy Allspaw Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and our special guest, Judith Newman, who's going to be talking with us about her new book, To Siri with Love. Stick with us.
Social ID questions are just basic questions that anyone would ask you, like what's your name, what's your age, how are you, and we're teaching him, to reply. My name's Jack Riley. I'm 2 years old, and when we ask him, how are you, he's supposed to say I'm fine or I'm good, just so it's a conversation starter. I didn't probe through what he knows yet, but he might surprise me. I don't know. He always does. How old are you? 2. Oh, wow. 2 like this? You do it? Oh, that's a good try. You do the fingers? You trying? 2. There you go. What's your name? All right, well, I guess he knows those. Hey, what's your name? My name's Jack Riley. Yay! Name's Jack Riley! Woohoo, you're so smart! You're so smart! Poof. Yay! Where's Jack Riley? Oh, there he is! Should we show Dad your cool new trick? Hey, Jack Riley, who is that? It's Susan. Yeah, who's this? Who's this? It's Daddy. Yay! Who's this? It's Nose. No, who is this? Who is this? It's a baby. It's a bat. It's a dog. And my time will come. It's my son. Tiger. His mom was saying he was getting so excited that he's discovering new phonetic sounds on his own, like with things that he knows, like dinosaur and pancake. Hey, what's this one? Duh. Dinosaur. Good job. What about buh? Good job. How about this one? Book. What about this? Car. What about this one? Good. Nice. What about this guy? Jack Riley, where'd you go? What's this?
It's a potato.
Yeah, so.
It's a potato.
Good. Okay, let's go for a bike ride. There he goes. Wow. Suzanne's so impressed. Oh, say hi. Oh. Are you all done, Jack? No, stop. Are you all done? Then you need to sit on the bike. Come sit on the bike.
Can't pretend to play.
No, Stop. Come back.
Jack Riley requests the bike but doesn't play with it. Since he is no longer being compliant with Jessica, they leave, which begins a tantrum.
Okay, then we're all done.
Mike is supposed to ignore the tantrum because giving him attention may prolong the tantrum and make it worse.
Every time we asked him to do anything, he sat down. And sort of, not violent is the wrong word, but roughly, to where, he almost threw his head back on cement a couple times. Where I grabbed his arms and lowered him because he was going to throw his head back. I thought, I have some tools that I use from you guys. None of them worked. The only thing I think it was more energy. You know what I mean? He's cooped up, and then there's no way I'm doing what you asked me right now. I gotta see lawn. I think he just was like, I'm not doing what you do. I'm gonna play right now. And so we tried that to where differentiate. If you go on the lawn, you can play, but you're gonna walk with me, and then you can play. No, it did not work. It was sort of a setback in my mind. Like I hadn't seen this behavior. I had no idea what to do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's why we're here.
I know. So not to make it dire, but yesterday to me was sort of a rough day. It was surprising to me. I know I make a lot of mistakes when I'm with him when he does stuff like that, but I know somewhere in here the tools are there. But yesterday I was like, they just all went out the window because he was just nothing was working. He was the boss yesterday. I couldn't figure it out. You do the A word thing, and sometimes I'm set back when he does something brilliant. He is who he is, and he'll be who he'll be. But I want him to go on dates and not be necessarily the 180 IQ guy who's focused on one thing. He does things that I just go, look at Cheryl, go, oh my God, I don't think I can do that now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
And you're Nancy.
And you're Shannon.
How about that? How's that for things? You know, we just before you came in, Nancy, we were reading two different comments from parents who wrote in about the beginning of school.
Yeah.
And one of them, it's really devastating, where the kindergartner, first time going to school, and she's been bullied so badly that the mom already had to pull her out. Oh. That somebody punched her in the head, somebody blocked her from the bathroom, and that she was completely, this is a sweet little girl who's an angel.
Right.
And it's so bad that the mom had to pull her out. And then another one where the kid is acting up in the afternoon, not in the morning, and being sent off to the principal's office. And you and I were just talking about this beginning of school, and it's hard. It's really, really hard, and your problems might be small and your problems might be large, but it's always, there's like, you got to get over some hurdles, you got to get over some humps, and it's all emotional. It's, you know, even there's been little kerfuffles for us, and it's hard.
Yeah, we've had some too so far.
And it makes me relive every single school year of what went wrong and what happened. And I was just saying, I feel like I dropped a ball because I didn't overdo it this year.
Right.
And you were saying, well, it's not your fault. And I said, but isn't that the thing? It always comes down to that. We go, well, what should I have done to make sure that this, and you know, at this point, I've run out of potential scenarios that could possibly happen. You know what I mean? It's like there is no way that we could do everything.
No,
we do our level best.
I have that helpless feeling when I drop him off in the morning and I watch him walk away. And I remember you saying that once, that we don't know what's going to go on for those next, 8 hours.
We really don't. And, you know, especially at the beginning of the school year, where their communication system isn't fully up and running, which I used to work in schools I know how that is. It just is so uncomfortable
Yeah.
for an autism parent because you feel like you're flying blind.
Yes, you do.
And you're trusting in a world in which sometimes trust isn't the thing. But so let's just all acknowledge that we're all on that page.
It's okay if you're having problems with
Right.
school.
And what I keep saying to Jem and to myself, two things. I keep saying work the problem and just keep swimming.
Mm-hmm.
The Dory thing. Work the problem and just keep swimming. It's important to know that the vast majority of people at your child's school usually want your child to do well and be well. There are exceptions, and for our mom who the principal didn't do anything about the bullying, I've got a lawyer for you tomorrow on the show that we're going to talk about that, because sometimes you have people who are incompetent and negligent and don't get it. But the vast majority of people working at schools
Want the best for your child.
They do. They want your child to be safe and they want your child to learn. That's why they got into it. They wouldn't have taken this low-paying job unless that was something that really jazzed them.
Right.
So we work the problem. Nobody is perfect. Everything can't be perfect. We work the problem and we stay diligent.
Yes.
Right? Okay. In
So
the
we've got-
news.
in the news, we've got some stories
We're going to start out with a particularly heinous story.
about the mom who received the letter about her son.
Yes. Jessica Green of Berkeley, Gloucestershire.
In England.
Was told to take action about her son making noises. Otherwise, the neighbors were threatening to report her family to social services.
Right, and they're making a complaint to the board. I guess it's sort of a neighborhood condo.
Right, like an HOA sort of situation.
Right.
And there's a little outdoor garden, and her child there he is. Look at this little angel.
He's nonverbal.
3 years old.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
know.
very much. And he's nonverbal,
And so he makes sounds to communicate.
Did Wyatt do that? He makes.
Yeah.
Jem did the same thing. He would make these high. I always said he'd
Right.
do R2D2 noises.
Right.
These high pitched. I can't even do it
Right.
because I can't get into my upper
Right.
sinuses. But it can make you crazy after a while. I can attest to that. But it is what it is, and it's not something you can just say to a 3-year-old. Hey, dial that down,
Right.
would you? Not even a typical 3-year-old.
No,
You can't.
no.
Thank you very much.
So she released a letter on Facebook.
They wrote her an anonymous letter.
Yeah, they did. And said that they were going to take it to the tenant services at the council there, make a noise complaint, and also take it up with social services.
And the letter was really nasty.
Yeah,
Like
he was referred to as an it.
It.
Yeah.
And it started out, basically, if you can't control your child, then it shouldn't be out in the garden doing whatever. It was really, and then it also said because he's out there so much making these noises, we all doubt whether he's really being taken care of and perhaps he's being neglected, which is that veiled threat of, we'll have him taken away from you if you don't take care of this.
So she said that she took the letters, it was intended as a form of bullying and a threatening nature. She said that the district council there is offering support to the family, and she's filed a complaint with the Gloucestershire police.
Yeah, and she said that this shows a selfish, narrow-minded, and uneducated view, and every person has a right to have a voice and to be heard, and for Henry, this is his only way.
Right.
Horrifying. We stand in support with this mother, and I think it comes down to that people are ignorant.
Yeah.
Whenever people say, really, well, autism awareness, don't we think we're all aware? No, I don't think we are. And I don't think people get it that they look and they see autism, they go, oh, well, that's autism there. And then they see a new circumstance where somebody's behaving in a way that doesn't make them happy, and there's no moment of, well, maybe they have autism,
right,
or maybe they have something, maybe they don't even think, okay, maybe there's something going on. And that's the awareness that I think we still desperately need. It's like teaching people how to be human beings.
Yes.
But apparently we have to do that. But we stand in support of that mom. Okay. Then we get into some science.
Yes.
So a new study that is looking at cerebrospinal fluid in young children in order to look and see if there is a link with ASD.
And they found perhaps an excess of this fluid.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. So we want to encourage people to take a look at that. There is this fluid is supposed to protect the brain, but it may interact in a way that could indicate that there's something else going on.
It also filters out the byproducts of brain metabolism, it says.
which, what that ends up translating to, I'm sure I don't know.
Right.
Because my degree in science is non-existent.
Well, it says that it filters out toxins that can be harmful inflammatory proteins, and that
Which
this
brings us all
fluid
back-
filters out these toxins on a regular basis.
But what it does do is it brings us back around to the questions. There are more and more people who are saying, is autism something that is autoimmune? Is there something that happens that triggers, is there exposure to things that triggers an autoimmune response that then has a cascade effect in the brain? And there's more and more, and this is just one more thing looking and saying, look, there are some differences in the cerebrospinal fluid. You can find out more about this by going to dealwithautism.com. And then I thought this was a cute story of so often, and you've got a son who's an artist, right? And so often we're talking about how do we get our kids involved, and this young man, Michael Nowicki, he's 21 years old, and he is on the autism spectrum, and he's an artist. And he decided that he would go to the local public library, and he went to the children's section and said, can I paint a mural for you?
Right.
Can I paint a mural for you? Now, what I love about this is that this then became his job for a while. And you can see a picture of him there. And he painted this, he didn't know, he's a painter, he's an artist, but I don't think he'd ever painted a mural before.
No.
So there was a lot that he had to learn about it. And what an exciting, I thought it was an inspirational story for all of us, that sometimes we're like, how's my kid ever going to get a job? Right? But this kid is getting international press for the fact that he said, I'm going to volunteer.
He went into the library to volunteer, and they said, we need a mural. He said, I happen to be able to be an artist.
So I absolutely love it. I'd love to see more people doing things like that. We've talked for a while about doing an installation here at CARD with Wyatt's work.
Right.
And I think, Nancy, I feel bad because I have not supported you enough in doing that. We need to make that happen.
We'll make that happen this year.
Okay. All right. Promise?
I promise.
Okay. We have other things we have to work on too that we have to get done.
Right. Lots of things.
Lots and lots of things to do.
Here's an article, Is It Time to Ditch the Autism Puzzle Piece? A new study suggests that it has a negative connotation.
Yeah, isn't this interesting? I thought that the puzzle piece came into being with Autism Speaks, but they're saying that as early as the 1960s that a puzzle piece was used to represent autism. I don't know whether that was ASA that started it, but
it's used by ASA, Autism Society of America.
And with so many
lots of
people.
groups, yeah.
Like, we don't have a puzzle piece on Autism Live's branding, and do you have one on ACT today?
No, we do not.
But a lot of organizations do, and it's sort of the international symbol. We wear a ribbon that's puzzle piece ribbon. Other organizations have a color, but we use the puzzle piece. But interesting to see that when they went to the general public and asked them, what do you associate this with, that it had negative connotations.
Yes, that it was associated with imperfection, incompletion, uncertainty, difficulty, the state of being unresolved, and most poignantly, being missing.
Yes, yes.
So,
which are not necessarily the things that we want autism associated with anymore.
Right.
So a growing movement of people saying perhaps it's time to let this go.
Yes.
For Autism Live, you may notice that in a lot of our branding, we have a tree. And that was very important to me and for us, because a couple of different things. The tree symbol for me always has been a thing about, you plant seeds and big things happen.
Right.
And that you got to put deep roots down to maintain a tree. And you can't just saw off one side because it tilts over. So trees are always a huge symbol for me, but there is also there are a lot of things that CARD usually has included a tree in almost everything that they are a part of, because the original LOVAS study, when it was published with a tree on it, the young autism study. So it all goes back to that.
Okay.
So that's why we have our symbol for a tree.
Positive symbol for growth.
Yeah. So that's how we look at things. And you guys have like a thing that's the horizon and like a sun.
Yeah.
Like a new day.
Right.
That's what I always get from that.
Yes.
So in any case. More hopeful, perhaps. Okay, and then
another scientific study here about the origins of autism.
Yes, looking specifically, and this just came out yesterday, that they continue to look at the brain, but biological psychiatry is looking at the pathology of autism and the point at which it begins to take shape in the human brain. And this is something that everybody always wants to talk about. So when is the moment? And they're saying that there's some reason to believe that 6 months is when they can look at an MRI and see that there is a difference in the way that the brain grows, which is interesting to me because I think more and more studies have looked at, a lot of us think that thought for the longest time that a child you couldn't see until 3.
Right.
Then it was 2.5, 2.
Right.
Then they were saying at 18 months that there were some markers, some micro movements that they could see even at 12 months.
Right.
And now to say that there are changes in the brain, I don't really know how many. They looked at 260 infants between the ages of 6 and 12 months. I have to say, I'm concerned for parents that are having to have an MRI at 6 months for a child because that's not necessarily the best thing for a child.
Right.
We've seen some concerns about excessive MRIs, but amazing that for whatever reason they participated in this and that we have some input showing that perhaps that there's a difference at 6 months.
Right. Inefficiencies appearing in the auditory cortex.
It really causes me to go back and think about what was going on at 6 months.
Yeah, me too.
Because Jem was talking. He was verbal
So
at
was Wyatt.
6 months and
a year
and chattering but at 6 months, he was singing.
Right.
And to think that something was going on that early,
right,
that was causing him to, in a little over a year later, lose language. It's a different way of looking at things.
It is.
Fascinating. In any case, you can find out more about that at sciencedaily.com. All right, we've got a great guest today.
Yes, we do.
I'm very excited about this guest. She's a wonderful writer, Judith Newman.
She's got the new book, To Siri with Love, coming out, based on a column that she wrote. That got a lot of feedback.
We actually covered that when it was in the New York Times. We covered the story that she had done, and so many people said this is so interesting. It got so much feedback that this is not her first book. We should say that she's an accomplished writer.
Right. 2
sons, twins, a very non-conventional life that she leads. So it's going to be fascinating to talk to her and to talk about her kids and this relationship that her son has
with Siri,
with her cell phone and Siri on her cell phone. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to take a break, and then hopefully we're going to be back with Judith Newman. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Johansson, and this is My Little House.
My Little House is an interactive, multi-sensory educational felt toy that I invented to help develop children's language skills.
I love My Little House.
I've been working as a speech therapist for over 20 years. I have spent my entire career working with young children. I work with children with language delays, and I have many children with significant cognitive disabilities and children on the autism spectrum. It has been a constant challenge finding toys that are fun, educational, and actually engage my students. In every preschool since I've been a young therapist, we carry on these felt boards. Kids love them because they're soft and they're fluffy, and there's usually these little pieces that attach to these boards because felt sticks onto felt. You bring them into the activity because they're putting a piece on the board. So it's almost kind of like magic. So then I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just take this one-dimensional board and make it into an actual 3-dimensional toy? How cool would that be?
That's the idea behind My Little House. You can spread it out flat like a 4-panel felt board, or here's the cool part. In the blink of an eye, My Little House easily converts into a 3-dimensional reversible house.
This is the outside. This is the inside.
My Little House comes with 36 felt cutout pieces that match outlines in 8 colorful rooms. And they're felt, so they stick. Each piece inside My Little House has been placed with purpose.
For instance, in the kitchen, whole half, under on top, inside, big, bigger, and biggest, empty and full, circle, triangle, inside, outside.
The really cool thing, I have a nonprofit, Lecotech. They are the folks that put out the Differently Able Guide for Toys R Us. They've been doing it for 25 years. They gave me their seal of approval as a toy that they feel is a toy with purpose, and that will make a difference. But My Little House isn't just for kids on the spectrum or with significant disorders. It's also for typically developing 2 to 5-year-olds. It's a fun toy.
Oh, this is so soft. That tastes good.
Recently, I took My Little House to the American Speech and Hearing Association convention in Philadelphia, and the response from my peers was overwhelming. Hundreds of therapists, teachers, and heads of school districts wanted to order them.
It was real validation for me that this truly is a toy that needs to get out there.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm a proud autism mom, I'm a former educator, and I am the host of Autism Live. And as all three of those things, I want to recommend to you My Little House. This is one of the smartest toys I have ever seen for teaching language to kids who have emerging language. Whether they're on the autism spectrum or completely neurotypical, it's a great, fun, reinforcing toy, but it's especially great for our kids that are on the autism spectrum because it makes learning fun and it makes it tactile. They have these felt shapes and they get to match them up. And I'm telling you, even the adults love to play with this. We loved this toy so much that we wanted to be able to bring it to you at a great discount. So right now, if you will go to www.smartfelttoys, and when you get to the coupon code, put in a-live.com, you'll get $5 off. Isn't that great? So I want to encourage you, go and get My Little House for all the kiddos in your life.
Being part of this community is really important to a mom with a son like Jackson, because it really does take a village, and you need so much support, you know, to help bring out all of the amazing qualities and skills and talents that our children have. So I'm just very grateful to everybody who was a part of this.
I think it helps with all sorts of that self-esteem, social skills. They seem to communicate a little bit with each other, and they had a lot of friends. The helpers were phenomenal, and I think the social skills for sure, because they, you know, they worked together and they did a couple of group things across the floor, and they sang songs together, and I yeah, for sure, I think it's a really huge deal. A great program.
What programs like this show is the person is in front of what we call today a disorder. I think what we're finding is that these sorts of brain challenges that make people unique can actually be gifts in ways we haven't discovered in the rest of society to bring them out. So when you see a program like this and you see the kids dancing, having fun, and making up jokes, making up the story. I was here when they did that. That was so amazing to watch because they were all focused, they were all present, they were all laughing, they were all getting into the creation of this story. And that to me sort of broke the barrier to say, no, first we're dealing with people and then we're dealing with the challenges.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy here on Autism Live, and we've got a great guest who's going to be joining us via Skype right now, Judith Newman, and she is the author of the book that everybody's talking about right now, To Siri with Love. Judith, we want to welcome you here. Judith this is not her first book, and we need to say that. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer, and this book is getting a great deal of attention because I think it's getting attention because it's so well written and it's so accessible for people who, whether you've got a kid that's on the spectrum or you don't, you've got a wonderful sense of humor. You've written for many things. In fact, this originally started with an article that was in the New York Times that we covered when it was out originally as one of our in the news things.
To Siri with Love was an original story in the New York Times, right?
So
it was. Oh, I didn't even know. So there you go.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Tell us how all this developed from it becoming an article to a book.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, I wrote about this. It had developed the way a lot of stories that I write develop, strangely. I just wrote something guilt-ridden on Facebook. I just said something about, my God, I'm a horrible mother. This is what I did. And my editor at the Times, who lurks to see these things, said, you should write about that. So that's what happened. But essentially, it was nothing more than sitting around noodling with Siri myself. I was looking at it, and it had so many, there was some BuzzFeed column about what you can do with Siri. And so one of the things it said was you could tell what you ask Siri what planes are flying overhead, and it will tell you, and it does. And I thought to myself, it gives you the name of the flight and the altitude and everything. And I just sort of was talking to myself, and I murmured out loud, why in God's name would anyone need to know this? And I hadn't even realized Gus was listening to me. And he said, well, so you know who you're waving at, Mommy. And then I sort of was like, oh, okay, and then I gave him Siri because he was sort of curious, and that started it. He just found great, he was completely riveted by this little device that was going to answer all of his odd little questions.
Yeah, one of the things I love is that you describe that, she's the ultimate companion in terms of patience when you want research and to talk about little known facts. And I don't think any of us really had thought about that before, but it resonates with everyone.
It does resonate with everyone. I mean, there's a reason that when you are sitting around and you go, so Siri, what are you up to? Siri has 5 different answers for what she's doing this evening. It's not just people on the spectrum who are talking to Siri. I think all of us, in a moment of boredom, when we discover that Siri will talk back to us, we in fact can't help ourselves, and we sit there and we start talking. I certainly know I start talking to her every now and then. I was just doing it the other day. So, but I think Siri holds a special place for kids and for kids who are communications impaired. I don't know if you've ever had your own kids play with Siri a little bit.
Yes, my son likes to change the voice on it and the language.
Okay.
But yes, we play with it, and it has Wyatt ever played?
He has not played with it.
It might be a fun thing to see what Wyatt does with it and to see how Siri responds to it. And I think I love, there's so many things that you describe in this book that I love, Judith. I love that you talk, I think it might even be in the introduction, you talk about the emails that you got from people after the New York Times report. Tell them about what somebody from Russia said.
Oh, it was wonderful. A woman in kind of halting English, or not halting, but clearly English wasn't her first language. She told me she was excuse me, a translator for Siri. That was her job. And she told me that now when she is translating, she would think of Gus, because she would think, excuse me, of his emotional reactions to what she was playing around with, to how she was making the language work.
Yeah, I love it. She said, I see that I need to make my Siri in Russian a kinder, gentler, more patient, excuse me, we're all going to have the throat tickle now. We're even through Skype, we're passing it around. And I have had the experience before driving my car and asking, having Hey Siri and asking Siri for something and not being able to get the answer I wanted because I wasn't asking in the right terms. And then finally, in frustration, saying, Siri, I am so frustrated with you right now. And I like just yelling at her. And then this moment of quiet and her saying, I'm really sorry to hear that, Shannon. I'm doing the best I can. Which calmed me down.
Sometimes she'll actually say, you don't need to yell.
Yes.
I've had that come out of her mouth too. She'll say, she does, she militates politeness in a way. Now, to us, that's just funny. But if your communication's impaired and you're not quite sure what's polite and what's not, it's also very useful. And it was certainly very, very useful for Gus.
Is that what do you think made him resonate so much with it?
Excuse me. Well, what made it resonate for him? It was a few things. Number one, who is more patient than a machine? At the point, I'm sure that we as mothers have all had this feeling sometimes when our kid, neurotypical or not, but particularly on the spectrum, our kid is just obsessing about something on and on and on and on. And there's only so many times you want to answer that question.
Yes.
And you finally just kind of go here. And, I was doing that. I was using Siri in perhaps not the best way in the world, but I was using Siri so that I didn't have to keep answering the same question. Well, what could be better? A machine that will answer a question in several different ways, maybe many different ways, and will never tire of answering it, and will not get exasperated with you for asking that question, unless you shout at her. I mean, she'll get a little bit, she'll correct you. But if you're just asking the question, it's fine. So I think that there was that element, and as I also have said, I don't know how easily back and forth conversation comes to your kids, but for Gus, it didn't come that easily. It not only didn't come easily, it really didn't come at all for a long time. He had a tendency to just say, usually in very simple sentences, to sort of blurt whatever it was he was thinking of, sometimes to me, but sometimes, to the closet or to my feet or wherever. And he would say what he wanted to and walk away. There was no such thing as reciprocity for a very long time.
Right.
So that's what Siri also does. It's reciprocity. You sit there and you ask a question and she'll answer, but sometimes she asks a question back, or sometimes her answer will lead to more questions as well.
Yeah, I love that it can, and then she's willing to do research on that, and she'll ask, did you mean this? Which opens a whole other can of worms.
Now you have twins, so you have one child who is typical?
One child who's typical and would always be whispering in Gus's ear to say, nasty things to Siri just to see the reaction. Not nasty exactly, let's just say racy things.
Right.
So, I know more about Kate Upton's bra size than I care to. That's where he went with that. But even he began to see the fun of it too. And I think that there are moments in our lives, and I don't think I'm wrong about this. Actually, friends told me about this, where if you're having a little moment of doubt or a little moment of insecurity, you might ask Siri a question. If I ask her right now, Siri, how do I look? And she'll say, see, on a scale of 1 to 10, I bet you're a 42. Now, I feel better. Right. And actually, I happen to have Siri on a guy's British voice right now.
I hear that.
That's even better as far as I'm concerned.
My son would like that. I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm not seeing people talk about that I want to talk about with you is that one of the things that I enjoyed was we really get to see your life. We get to be involved in your life. And your life is interesting, Judith. I don't know if you realize this, but
are you using interesting as a euphemism?
No. I mean, your life in some ways, I looked at it and you're somebody I would want to be friends with, right? And someone that I can easily picture myself being friends with, because there are things that the way you reference them, I go, oh, she gets it the same way that I get it. But the circumstances of your life are kind of, I think anybody would call them unconventional. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, of course, it's fair to say. I as I say in the book, I've been asked so many. My husband and I don't live together. He's much older than I am, and I've been asked to do books on this, and I cannot imagine a more boring book than a book about why two people don't live together. There are reasons, but it's just not. And I actually I can't remember who I did it for now. The Guardian. I think I did a piece for it in conjunction with this because they asked me. But yeah, I guess it is unconventional. Gee, if you want to be, I hope you'll friend me on Facebook then when this is over.
I certainly will.
I'm going to immediately go.
I will.
But sure, it's unconventional in that way, and some of that unconventionalness, if that's the word, was, I don't know, it was worrisome in the sense that I'm sort of like the poster child for a mother of an autistic child. So, the much older father, the having children, having twins, having children later in life, having a rough pregnancy where there's a lot of, supposedly the science says, with a lot of tension, there's a lot of release of cortisol, and that could have reasons. So, in the book, I speculate a little bit about this, all of the many reasons that I might have, but at the end of the day, who cares? You have your days of thinking about it, and then you're presented with this wonderful, strange little person, and life goes on.
Tell us about Gus now, and what are your hopes for his future? And let's talk a little bit about the future for our kids with autism.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is what keeps us up at night, right? We sit there and we think to ourselves, what's going to happen when we're not here? Yeah. How independent can this person be? And at 3 o'clock in the morning, my mind goes to the most dire circumstances. My mind goes to my son will not have friends, my son will be homeless, who will he have to talk to, who will he have to cut his food, even because at almost 16 he still can't use a knife. So every awful thing is there. And then I wake up in the morning and I see a person who is, I don't want to say incrementally changing, because autism is strange. It's not incremental. At least in my experience, it's like your kid is, doing this, and all of a sudden there's this jump in abilities and development. And I don't know if that's been your experience, but that's sort of been mine. So I say that when I wrote this, he was 14, and I say he, like most kids on the spectrum, he's the adorable question mark. You really don't know at 14, whereas you can have a fairly good idea of other neurotypical child's independence at the age of 14, that they will be. And so my hopes for him and my dreams for him just are all about having a place at the table. That's what I think about every day. That place doesn't have to be anything exalted. It has to just be, because I know he's such a social person, and I know that his ability to connect with people is there, but not like other people's. It is problematic for him. I just want him to have a place in the community in whatever way that is. So when people say to me, well, why did you write this book? And of course, I have completely selfish reasons for writing this book. And they are that my son will be remembered just a teeny bit in a few years, and he will have a job, because as I write about, he is, without being at all academic, he is more motivated to have a job than just about anyone you know. And there's the problem with him, and maybe you've seen this with your kids, is there's always some part of a job that he can't do. There's like one thing that in a series of things, like I write in the book about how he actually kind of feels he's a doorman. I mean, he doesn't, but he does all of the doorman duties in my building, except that one thing about not keeping people out. He could never do that.
Right.
So he couldn't be a doorman really, but I'm just saying that there are ways, maybe not that, but there are ways, I think, for us as a culture to find places at the table for autistic people, because we have so many now around us. Isn't it going to be better if we help them find their niche, if we make small adjustments? Because often the adjustments you have to make are not huge. Like, I'm sure, did you see that that wonderful video about the dancing barista
that Ellen featured,
went kind of viral?
Yes.
And Ellen, I mean, what had to happen for this kid to get a job, that his dream job at a coffee place? It took one manager to just say to himself, this kid makes really good coffee, so what if he has to dance while he does it?
Right.
And I just thought that was wonderful and beautiful, and that's what I hope happens with my son, more than anything else, that he finds that person who will let him do, maybe my son has to hop when he talks to you, but he's still giving you great directions, or maybe whatever it is. He will show up every day, and he will be the happiest, most joyful employee that you've got.
Well, and you mentioned something to us in the pre-production about a story that is of interest to you right now. Darius McCullum, who is the subject of the documentary Off the Rails. We had Adam Irving, the director of the film. It's a documentary. I think it's on Netflix or Amazon right now, one of the two. It's amazing documentary about this man who his entire life was obsessed with the MTA and did everything he could to try to work for the MTA. And when they didn't hire him and wouldn't hire him, he took it upon himself as a very young man. He just hired himself and was often left in charge of running trains, and then would be caught and arrested and do jail time.
Right.
And that time and time again, he had lawyers advocating for him, trying to find a way that he could have the job that he was doing.
If he only could do a job doing this, as opposed to be getting in trouble with the law.
But instead, they keep arresting him and putting him in jail. When he's been, every time and believe me, we all understand, he confiscated the trains, and he would, without a license was driving them, but he was always driving them safely.
Right.
If somebody just gave him a little training.
And the buses, and people will say, they have the same answer. Well, how could you have someone like this? He didn't have insurance. Who knows what he might do? And I said, I know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to steal another train or bus, and he's going to drive it safely. That's what he's going to do.
Exactly.
So, but this is a man. I mean, this kills me. This is a man who has spent more than half of his life in jail over this nonsense. And when I called the MTA in the book, I call a spokesman, and I asked him about this, and he talked to me like I was out of my mind, like I was asking the MTA to hire a felon. And I'm like, well, he is a felon. He's a felon because he keeps getting arrested for doing the same thing, because you've arrested him. And is there not some place that this guy could be?
Yeah.
And apparently, it's a rule. You can't have a felon working for the MTA. But surely, here's what I think. If I won the lottery tomorrow, what I would do is I would blow, like $60,000, 50 or 60, whatever it costs, to have someone shadow Darius McCullum around for a year, to show that he was a safe person to do this job. Right. That's what I would do. And I wish, if anybody listens to the, and look, I don't know Darius McCullum. There may be something else that I'm unfamiliar with and I'm wrong, but everything I see and read, and I've talked to his lawyer, there doesn't seem to be anything making this an unrealistic goal. So if there's somebody out there with big money and they want to kind of save one person's life, that's what I suggest that they do.
I love it.
And you're really focused on this idea of work and our kids on the spectrum.
I am because, you know, like a lot of nice Jewish girls, I've grown up with the idea that work, there are only two things in life that are really important: work and love. You know,
Right.
It's that Freudian notion, and we can't control too much about love and who our kids love and when they love and if they love, but we can kind of control something about work, at least for some of them, at least for more of them. At least that's what I think. And so I guess I think that that's where I like to. When I talk for this book and when I talk to people like you guys and do great shows like this, that's kind of the message I'd like to get across.
Wonderful.
That get our kids work, meaningful work.
Meaningful work, yeah.
Where do you see Gus 10 years from now?
Well, in my dream world, what he's doing is playing to his strengths, which is being like, you don't live in New York City, but Grand Central, he spends an awful lot of time at Grand Central, knows all the conductors. Now, I don't think that I'm not sure if he has the coordination to actually drive a train. I don't think he does. I think that he could be that guy who they have guys in the information booth who do nothing but give out information to people all day long, and that would be his happy place. He could do it. He would be thrilled. He could do it now, and it's something like that. I mean, I don't know. You know, if that's that seems kind of realistic to me. He could do. I don't even know what it is he could do.
Right.
I used to joke because he's such a friendly person who likes to make connection about being a Walmart greeter or something like
Right.
that. That would be great for him.
Yes.
You know, this is not about money. This is not about status. This is about being part of something larger than himself.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's about
that's
dignity.
what I want
Yeah,
for him.
about
it's
finding
about human
fulfillment by
dignity.
having a purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And what about your other son? Because I hate it when we leave the siblings
Yes.
out, and he is amazing and brilliant and a
great.
light unto himself. What do you think he's going to be doing in 10 years?
Well, he tells me one of the reasons he's barely on social media is because he plans to have a career in politics, only not here in this country. He actually, he's going to be a junior in college, and he wants to, at the moment anyway, he's telling me that he wants to go and study in England. Maybe he's seen too many of those videos where they all seem to be having fun in Parliament. I don't know what the story is, but he says he wants to go to university there. So in fact, over Christmas, we're going to go and look at a couple of schools there. He has a British passport because my husband is English, so this makes a little sense. But also, he really just wants to be near his Newcastle, his beloved football team there. And I think he's planning on paying his way through playing poker, because that's what he...
All right.
That's what he spends a lot. My whole house this summer, I kept walking into my house, and there were like a bunch of strange kids, sort of looking a little guilty and shifting chips underneath the table. Kind of fun. I don't know what they were playing for.
What is his relationship like with Gus?
Well, you know, I tell people who are in a similar situation, whether it's twins or not, you've got to be really patient with your neurotypical kid and not mind if they're embarrassed or they're sometimes exasperated, because of course at certain points Henry was and sometimes is, but he adores his brother. It's finally occurred to him after years of trying to be in some competition of his own creation. It's occurred to him that his brother doesn't want to compete with him, isn't interested in it, and is just his champion no matter what. His brother always, yay, you come home with the chess trophy, yay, whatever it is. So even though still Henry gets a little exasperated, and he says to me, Mom, you're going to have to give me more than half the death money because I have to take care of him. I love the term death money. I've got to, sort of clue him in that I let him call it that, but I should probably say the word inheritance. But anyway, you've got to do this because Gus is, I'm going to have to do this. And I'm like, you might have to do something. Yeah, you might have to do something. I don't shy away from the reality of the fact that he will probably have to look after his brother's interests in some way, not entirely. I think my guess would be that Gus will be mostly independent, except for issues of money, because I can't. He's so trusting. I can't see how it's going to change, and that he'll be able to deal with that. But who knows? Who knows?
Right. Well, Judith, we have to say it's been such a delight to have you here. We really want to recommend that people get the book, To Siri with Love, and it's available in all the major booksellers. You can get it on Amazon. And you have other books as well. Is there a place where you'd like to send them to, in particular, our viewers?
Nah, not really. I mean, it's just go to SiriWithLove.com or JudithNewman.com if you want to read stuff I've written. But no, just wherever makes you happy. Going to independent bookstores if that makes you happy, and just like sneak in there and turn my book, right side up. You know how you do that in bookstores, and then just flee. That would be good.
Right, I love that. Okay. Well, it's a fascinating read. You're a lovely, luscious writer. I really felt like I was in New York City with you and your family, and it's delightful. And so we really want to encourage people.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Now I've got like my afternoon's work cut out for me. It's like Googling and listening to past shows and all of that stuff. I really appreciate it.
We'll take a look at our interview with Adam Irving from Off the Rails. We thoroughly enjoyed having him here. He was delightful.
All right. Well, thank you, Judith, for being on the show. And To Siri with Love, we encourage everybody to go out and get it.
And Judith, I sent you a friend request on Facebook.
Oh, you did? Oh, well,
already.
Okay.
And I also, I'm going to say this too. I want to introduce you to Joanne Lara from Autism Works Now. I think you'll have a lot in common.
Oh, that would be great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Judith.
Have
Bye-bye.
a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Take a quick break.
We're here at the end of the show. Do we have enough time to take a break, or should we just forge on to the end? Okay, we have to end, she said. Great interview, great book. Really want to encourage people to get it, and I think it's a really fun read and deep and rich and fabulous with details. It's very enjoyable. But I also want to give you some tips about what's happening tomorrow. We got a big show tomorrow. So our first guest tomorrow, Anthony Jacques. He is, if you've been watching Atypical, which we've been telling everybody you should watch this. It's available on Netflix. Everybody's been talking about it. It's been controversial for a couple of reasons, but the main character is a boy who's on the autism spectrum. And a lot of people were like, we wish that person had been played by somebody on the autism spectrum. Well, here's the long and the short of it. They invited people on the spectrum to audition for the role. There was one young actor that they particularly liked, but he wasn't right for the role.
Right.
But they liked him so much that they couldn't get rid of it, so they wrote a role in for him, and now he's a series regular. You can see him in episodes 6 and 8, if I'm correct. Anthony Jacques is going to be here with us in the studio tomorrow, an actor who's on the spectrum and a part of the Atypical cast. We've got Bonnie Yates with us, and she's going to be answering some questions.
And you
about
had some
back
questions
to school.
today,
We got some questions today that are about some of the not good bumps at the beginning of school that she's going to be addressing. And then we have Matt Asner on the show tomorrow. And there's a rumor that he might bring his dad, Ed, but I don't know. We haven't had confirmation, so don't hold me to that. But Matt's going to be here talking about the Ed Asner poker tournament that's coming up.
Right, that's coming up.
It's the September 9th, and star-studded, lots of folks coming out to be at that, including Rosie O'Donnell. And we're going to be there on the red carpet. Also want to say today is the last day that you can enter to win a scallop. We're down to the last of it here. So if you would like to win a scallop from Convade and R82, you need to write in right now to autismlive@gmail.com. It's there on your screen, and say, I want the scallop. We're going to choose one winner on tomorrow's show at random. Please make sure that you give us your mailing address so that we can tell Convade how to mail it to you.
It's just a great invention.
It is a great invention. For those of you who don't know and want to know more about it, you can call 844-US-MOBILITY, or you can visit alsoforme.com, and it's the number 4. Okay, we're out of time. I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being with me today.
I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.